Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Universal Dialect Show. Happy New Year. It's the 7th of January, and I'm already starting off with a bang. The guest that I have on right now has a show on YouTube called Raised by Giants, which features a lot of guests, a lot of them that are my favorites. And they range for anywhere from being into the paranormal, spiritual, um, and things along those natures. Guests like Shane the Ruiner Sador, Darcy Weir, Johnny Enoch, Mary Rodwell, and many more. Uh, I would like to introduce my guest today, Ryder Lee. What's up, my man?
What's going on, Chris? Thanks so much for inviting me. I'm really looking forward to the awesome conversation we're about to have. Let's
All
go
right,
deep.
yeah.
Let's go deep.
Let's go deep, my man. Let's go deep. Um, do you believe in synchronicities? Before I ask you about the origin story, do you believe in synchronicities?
I think to a degree, yes, I do believe in synchronicities because it's happened to me several times. Now, I'm not 100% sure on the actual definition of synchronicities. I
Right,
think people will just kind of throw things together and they're like, "Oh yeah, that was very synchronistic," and
right,
and it just kind of becomes that thing. But yeah, I tend to believe it because there's certain things that will happen, and then like later on that day or maybe that next week, like it connects to
right,
each other. Like you can be talking about one thing and then later on that day someone else brings up the exact same thing that you were talking about, so there's really no way to actually explain it. I don't know if synchronicity is the best way to explain it. I don't think it's really explainable at all. I think it's
right,
just maybe how the universe works, right?
right.
And it's giving us these signals that we're kind of on the right track is what I kind of look at as synchronicity.
The reason why I asked this is because I think I scheduled or we were in conversations about a month ago, right? And then I scheduled your interview today, and then I scheduled another interview tomorrow with someone else at 12, right? So I took the whole month off of December to spend time with my family for the holidays. But I was doing research on you and this other guest, and yesterday I was trying to get more questions for you and this other guest, and I didn't realize that you and this other guest that I'm interviewing tomorrow were on a show together, Forbidden Knowledge News. You were on with Lindsay Sharman.
Oh, you got Lindsay on tomorrow?
Tomorrow, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I actually have her on my show on Monday.
Oh, that's
So
okay.
that,
Okay,
that's
dude.
that's double synchronicities
That
right
is
there.
double. That's awesome, right? Isn't that crazy? So
Right?
she,
She's a good person.
yes,
She knows what's going on. Yeah, she's got a lot of really good information too. So yeah, that's double double. We're hitting them with the double doubles, dude.
I'm telling you, man. She's blowing up. You're blowing up. So listen, let's start off with the origin story of Ryder Lee and what led you down the path that you're currently on, and spare no details, please.
Well, I'm gonna try and shorten it up just a little bit, but basically, whenever I was really young, I had a lot of experiences, a lot of paranormal experiences from the around the age of 4 until, well, as far back as I can remember. I would have these beings come out of the wall and surround me almost every night. I would always, sleep with my parents, and in between them, I slept with them until I was like 8. That's probably embarrassing to some people,
Nope,
but
nothing wrong with that.
that's just what I did because I was, scared of these beings, but they never like touched me or like hurt me or did anything weird to me. They would just get really close to me, and they were like translucent kind of entities. They would just morph out of the wall. And I think the most that I ever seen was maybe like 8 of them, you know,
At
around
one
me and
time.
yeah, at one time.
Oh man.
And so from that point on, that kind of stopped happening. I told my parents, I was like, hey, like I'm seeing these weird things at night. They're coming out of the walls. And, of course, your parents, I'm from a very small town, and they didn't know what was going on. They thought something was wrong with me. So they're like, oh, let's take him to the eye doctor, see if he's just, seeing things, see if he's hallucinating or whatever. And they take me to the eye doctor. The eye doctor was actually really cool. He was like, hey, I think that he just has like a different kind of vision, like he can see things that normal people just can't see. And he gave me this little flashcard thing, and it had like circles. It looked like a bullseye. It's like circles within circles within circles. And he was like, whenever you can make these circles pop up off of the flash card and then come back and see me, right? And my mom wasn't into doctors or anything like that, so I never went back, but I did check out that flash card and I could make those circles pop up off of the flash card.
Right.
So then that kind of faded away, that kind of stopped. And then I think some kind of other abilities came to me, like some kind of precognitive psychic abilities at some points throughout my childhood. And this isn't anything new. People, I think all kids have these kinds of abilities, right? Because whenever they're born in here, they're closest to whatever created them, right? So they have a stronger connection to the other side, right? So they can perceive things. It's not anything special toward me. I think that we're all like that, and just some of us are more, right? And I would, get information about things that would happen before it happened. Nothing like big, like no big events or anything, just like things in my personal life, Like I would be able to predict the song that would come on the radio before it came on the radio, and I would get it right almost every time. And little things like that, and then that kind of stopped happening too. That ended up getting kind of shut down within me, and then um, I ended up moving out of my parents' house at the age of 15 and moved in with my grandma, and then that became like a whole thing. And then I had, because I think that these things happen in stages, right? Everyone talks about a spiritual awakening and, having these kinds of awakenings throughout their entire life. And I tend to think that there are more than one awakenings, right? Like they're separated, right? There's like the corruption side of awakening. There's the side where you figure out that the government is, screwing with us, and there's things going on governmentally and societally, like the food, the air, the water, and like all that. And, so I watched this documentary called Zeitgeist whenever I was
Oh,
like,
great one.
it was right when it came out. It was in 2008. This was actually before I moved out of my parents' house. And that really just blew me wide open. I was like, holy crap, like all the stuff that's going on, because Zeitgeist went from, it covered a bunch of different topics. This is the original Zeitgeist that came out in 2008.
It started with religion, right? It started with the religion aspect first, and then it kind of got into the monetary at the
Yeah.
end.
Yeah. It went from religion, then it went, I think, 9/11 and everything that happened surrounding 9/11. And then it got into the monetary system and how, our dollar is basically worthless because there is no gold in the Federal Reserve anymore, right? It's just a piece of paper that we've all bought into, that we've assigned value to. It has no real value. And because I was kind of, a Christian growing up a little bit, and because my mom, she didn't believe in anything. She was a self-proclaimed atheist. So I went the Christian route just to be a rebel toward her. I was like, okay, well, I'm just going to be a Christian. You don't like what I'm doing, I'm just going to do the exact opposite of what you believe, right? And once I watched that movie, I was like, holy shit, like all this stuff is just fake. It's all fake. And I always had that kind of feeling within me since I was really young, that I'm in a reality that's just built upon nonsense, just pure fakeness. Like, why is everyone here so fake? I didn't never really understood what was going on. Why am I here? What am I doing here?
Right. But you knew something was up.
Something was definitely up,
Yeah.
And so after that Zeitgeist movie, I kind of, just went down that rabbit hole, and I'm questioning religion, I'm questioning Christianity, I'm questioning this God, I'm questioning, Jesus, and all of these stories that, I had inadvertently bought into whenever I was younger. And I'm, starting to develop a more critical thinking and common sense on my own. And, granted, there wasn't anything that I was watching during that time. This was just my own thoughts and my own ideas and my own things that are going on. And I would just like lay down in my bed, and then I would just kind of, go run through all of these things. And then I would just be putting pieces together, like, you know, what are we in? Are we in a simulation? Is this just one dimension stacked upon other dimensions? And then I'm like thinking like, okay, well, if we're in a third dimension, that means that there's a fourth dimension, a fifth dimension, a sixth dimension, and it just kind of goes on.
Right.
And this wasn't anything that I was reading or watching or anything. It was just what I was creating out of my own consciousness, right? Then I get to a point where, none of this stuff, like I can't like comprehend it and speak it out to other people. Cause again, I'm from a very small town, very, Christian conservative type of town, which there's nothing wrong with being conservative. But whenever you're going through these kinds of things, it's hard for anyone to understand you, right? So the information just collapsed in upon itself, and then I started going down a really dark path with drugs, heavy drug use. I was getting into, because I was just trying to block it all out. I was like, oh, maybe I'm just crazy. Maybe I'm just maybe there's something wrong with me. I just
Right.
need to drown all of this shit out. I just need to make it go away.
And
So I went
and
down.
and Ryder, while you're going through this, are you still having experiences, or
Um,
or did those things, the drugs, drown those experiences out? You feel?
to a degree, but like with drugs and stuff, it can put you into like a psychosis, right? Like a drug psychosis, and you can be seeing things and hearing things that aren't really happening. That's how I know that a lot of these secret space program and these super soldiers and stuff is mostly a drug induced psychosis, right? Because I've experienced certain things like that. Like I've experienced hearing voices. I've experienced, things trying to communicate with me through my technology. I've seen things in my reality when I was on drugs, right?
Yeah.
But I've distinguished the difference. I know that none of that stuff is real, right? But they're taking it as it's real. And I've had crazy dreams too, like abduction dreams and like all that stuff, but I know that none of it's real, right? But these people are having these dreams, having these kinds of drug psychoses, and they're getting online and then they're speaking about them as if they were real physical experiences. Well, they weren't. They were a dream. They were an astral experience. They were a some kind of drug induced psychosis, and we know from MK Ultra that that's what that they were using. LSD was all involved with MK Ultra. Every single one of those sub projects has been declassified that you can go through and read through. Just type in MK Ultra declassified documents on Google, and you can read through all of them. Almost every single one of them involves some kind of hallucinogenic, LSD, mushrooms. And Sidney Gottlieb was the head of that. And Sidney Gottlieb had a brother, and the brother was a plant biologist. Right? So he was actually creating all of these different kinds of drugs, and not only the hallucinogenics and the mushrooms and the LSD they were using, they were also using other kinds of drugs like amphetamine. Adderall came out of the MK Ultra programs. Antidepressants came out of the MK Ultra programs. All of these drugs that is out in the community right now came out of the MK Ultra programs. They were using
Right.
those as testing on people and creating these
Right.
different medicine compounds to see what it's going to do to the psyche of the American public.
Right.
Right. So um, after I kind of, got through that whole thing with, drugs and all that, I've been, clean and sober now for 3.5 years.
Congratulations.
And so I was like, okay, well, I need to do something, right? Like I need to, do some kind of information about, something. I need to be trying to help people to open their mind and bring some critical thinking and some common sense into their, into this field of, conspiracy theory and, aliens and UFOs and all of this stuff that people are talking about. So I, ended up creating my own show, which I could have done it a little bit earlier. And if I probably would have done it before all of that stuff was, before I got into all the drugs and all that, it probably would have, helped me not go down that path. But
Right.
I don't regret any of that because it's made me a better person. It's turned me into the person that I am today. So yeah, that's kind of really how it started. And I did start it in 2020, which didn't really have anything to do with what
Right.
was happening in 2020. It was just, my path and what I was supposed to be doing. So yeah, that's how it started.
Man, you and I have a lot of parallels, dude. That last statement, one of the last statements that you made was like the opportunity to do it earlier, but you didn't. Right. I was wanting to do this like in 2012, and I wound up doing it last year, so I'm like 10 years too late. But I mean, you can't do anything about that, right? The fact that you, as a kid, were seeing beings, I was seeing beings as well. The fact that you knew something was up at a young age, like something was different. You knew people were fake, things were fake, weren't right. Particularly religion, same here. You know what I mean? So you and I have a lot of very similar parallels. So let's get into like these beings. Do you know who these beings were by any chance? Or have you ever been able to look up and do any research on who these beings may have been?
Well, what I've kind of discovered with, doing my show and talking with certain individuals that would know more than what I know, I believe that it was because I came into this reality with my third eye open, like just blazing open, right?
Right.
So it gave me the ability to see into other, maybe a different reality or a different dimension. And that doesn't mean that those beings were physically here, right? Because I believe that we live in like a convoluted reality where all, if these dimensions do exist, they're all just kind of stacked on top of each other, right? So they're all here with us within this third dimension. It's just some people can see it and some people can't, right? There's it's like an overlay kind of system where, the fourth, the fifth, and the sixth is all here with us. It's
Happening at
just
the same time, right?
it's all happening at the exact same time. And sometimes you can get a glimpse into that other reality or that other dimension, and you can see things that might be there. So that's what I think was happening. It was my third eye that was completely open, and that's what gave me the abilities to actually perceive these translucent beings that would come out of the walls.
Did you get a sense that they knew you were able to see them?
High possibility. I think
Okay.
so. I think that they would, because I distinctly remember one night where one of them like almost got nose to nose with me. It was
Oh
like
wow.
so close to my face, and I just put the sheet up over my
Right.
head or the blanket up over my head, and then I could still see the outline through the of the being through the blanket. So I think that they high possibility that they knew that I could see them at that time.
And they were all the same type of beings, or they were possibly different. Every interaction that you had, were they all the same with these beings?
Some of them were shorter, some of them were taller. So, but they all had the same kind of translucent kind of look to them. I think some of their faces were just a little bit different. Some of them had like a really open, like mouth, like kind of like that. It was like a circular shape, and then some of
Right.
them had like a weird like grin to them and stuff. But yeah, they never hurt me or touched me or anything like that. So I don't think anything nefarious was doing. It might have just been like an observation type
And
thing. Like they
you
were
have
there
siblings,
just to observe
correct?
me. No, I'm an only child.
Okay, all right. So I was gonna ask if your siblings saw anything. So in your research, because you had the show for so long, you've talked to so many people, particularly like Darcy Ware and Johnny Enoch. What do you know as far as how many beings exist outside of the human race that have been coming here, either through being on the same plane or coming from space and other planets? Do you have any idea of that, or
Well, that's the thing with this whole ET and this whole UFO kind of topic, right? I don't think any of these beings are physical beings.
why?
They, because no one has ever met a physical being, ever.
Okay,
No one has ever met a physical ET in the history of this phenomenon, ever. Right? It's always in a different kind of state, in an altered state, under the influence of drugs, in the dream state, in the astral state. Right? No one has ever had an ET physically in their home. It just doesn't happen, right? And this is where the confusion comes in with this whole thing, right? There's people that's looking for nuts and bolts ET physicality when it's not true. Can't do it. It's impossible for them to be here. Each planet, I believe, has a different frequency level, right? It's a different code. Right. So if you're coming here physically from a different planet, you can't sustain physicality here. It's impossible for you to do that. You would have to be in some other kind of form, right? Now they can appear physical, but you can't reach out and touch them, right? You can't shake hands with them, can't punch them in the face or kick them in the balls or whatever, right?
Right.
Like they're non-physical entities, right? And that's why disclosure is bullshit. And the only way that they can do any type of real disclosure and see, it's a huge cover up. All this stuff this is just my personal opinion and through my research and talking with others, is that the ET phenomenon is a huge cover up. And in order for them to not take responsibility for the things that they have created and the things that they've done to the human population on the planet, they can just blame it on ETs. They can just blame it on something outside of ourselves, right? When it's been us this entire time, right? Whenever you look back at the history of UFOs, right? The earliest one that's not affiliated with any kind of religious text, because I don't think that religious text can be taken as a historical fact, right? I think that religious text is allegorical, metaphorical, and is meant to tell a story of something completely different. It's encoded, right? So if you look back at the history of these UFOs, you go back to the Sonora Aero Club in Northern California in the mid 1800s. Peter Peter Minnis and Charles Delshaw, I believe it might be James Delshaw, but I think it's Charles Delshaw. There's schematics, there's drawings of these kinds of craft. They were creating anti-gravity craft in the mid 1800s.
Where
The
was this
Sonora
at?
Air Club in Northern California.
Oh shit.
I can't think of the exact name of the town or the city in Northern California. I would have to look it up. But you can type in Sonora Aero Club in Northern California in Google, and it'll bring up all these schematics and all these drawings of these craft that they were developing. So then you look at the newspaper articles of that time, and you'll see that people were seeing things in the sky, right?
Right.
And so then if you fast forward a little bit into World War II, World War II, and Walter Bosley, by the way, I have to give Walter Bosley credit on that. I've had him on my show 2 or 3 times. He's written several books on the Sonora Aero Club in Nimza in Germany and, all that. So I just needed to give him proper credit there. So then you fast forward a little bit to World War II. Back in the Sonora Aero Club, they were using a green spinning mercury fuel additive to let their craft have like anti-gravity capabilities to be able to fly, right? In order for it to be able to propel itself. So fast forward to World War II in Germany, they were doing the exact same thing, except they were using a red spinning mercury for their anti-gravity craft, the Glocke Bell technology. I'm sure you're familiar with the
Nazi,
Glocke,
yeah.
the Nazi Bell.
Yep.
So basically all that the Bell did was lift up off of the ground, right? And it had to have a bunch of electricity running to it. And from my understanding and putting two and two together and researching this, is that the Glocke Bell was just a component of the craft. It wasn't the entire craft. You couldn't get inside the Bell and take off and be going to outer space and stuff. It was like the engine. It was like the drive, the anti-gravity component of the actual craft, right? And that's why I believe it was left behind in Germany during World War II, was because it was just a component. We didn't have the rest of the technology to put the Bell inside of to be able to travel around and
Actually use it.
Yeah. So what happened after World War II was Project Paperclip, where all of these German and Nazi scientists, aerospace techs came to the United States, and they started developing these craft. I mean, NASA actually came up out of the Nazi aerospace technicians and scientists that came over from World War II. Same with the CIA. All of these, a lot of these three-letter organizations and NASA all came up after World War II and was a collaboration with the Nazi scientists and the Nazi aerospace techs, right? So they started building these craft, right? Because their whole mission was just for manned space travel. And after World War II, whenever they got into the United States, was all manned space travel, was what it was all about, right? And they were basically helping the Americas create these anti-gravity technologies and crafts, right? And all of these events all happen after World War II, right? Roswell event of 1947, Washington Flap event of 1952, the UFOs over the White House, right?
Yeah.
The Kecksburg event of 1965, and we go to the moon in 1969, and the first abductions happen after World War II as well. Betty and Barney Hill,
Correct.
right? And if you research the Betty and Barney Hill case, it turns out that the very first statements that Barney comes out and says, he says that it was the military that abducted them.
Oh,
That he saw military people in military uniforms abduct him. Right. It wasn't until later, after they had been getting regressed by the regressionist, that they changed their story to it being aliens. Right. So when you're putting all these pieces of the puzzle together, and the government is coming on and telling you that after every single one of these events, there's always a military officer, or the head of any kind of military. After any of these events, you can go back and research it, and look at what they said and what they came out and said. After every one of them, they always come on and say there's absolutely no reason to believe that this event was of extraterrestrial nature, right? Well, if it's not extraterrestrial, then what is it? Right? That only leaves one other option,
right. It's
right?
us. Yeah.
That it's us, that it's humans, that it's the craft that we have created over the years, and where Germany kind of picked up on the Sonora Aero Club's technology, because they were actually funded by this organization called NIMSA, which came from Germany, which wasn't Germany at the time. It was actually Prussia. And
Right.
Prussia turned into Germany later on. So they've had the technology forever now. And then,
Right.
like, looking at it, at how it's progressed, it only makes sense that it's us, right? It started out as a very primitive technology, right? Compared to what we have now, right? Everyone was seeing disc shaped craft, back in the day. There was like, they called them, I forget what they called them. It was like, looked like a trash can lid with a a little bubble on the top, right?
Right. Or sometimes people say it was like a plate with another plate, like, saucer,
Yeah.
like saucers, like a saucer. You put a tea, what do you call it? Like a coffee mug on, and then, on either side. I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
So it started out as that, right? Because that's the technology that they were working with at the time, and now it's turned into something completely different. It's evolved. No one sees tin can disc shaped craft anymore, right? It's
Now it's
different.
triangles now, or
Now it's triangles. Now it's light orbs.
tic
Now it's
tacs.
freaking yeah, those tic tacs, the Nimitz tic tac UFO, and all that, and it's just changed and evolved over time, right?
Right.
And that's my explanation of why it's changed and evolved, right? If it was an extraterrestrial, species that were actually in these craft, then they wouldn't change and evolve the way that they have. They would already have the latest technology that they could possibly have, and that's what they would be using, right? But with it changing the way that it has, it means that it's been a human technology. I mean, look at our phones. Look how our phones have changed, right? It used to be a house phone, right? And then now house phones are no longer a thing. Now it's all cell phones, and the cell phones
Right.
used to be super primitive. They used to have buttons on them, right? Now we have a touchscreen cell phone. It's like how everything else has evolved in our reality, so has the UFOs, and that only leads to one conclusion: that it's a man-made phenomenon.
Right. So let's go back a little bit, because I remember while I was in the military, I had like my first experience, not my first, but my first experience while I was in the military, seeing lights. And then like secretly kind of interviewing people while I was still in, even though I wasn't supposed to. But I remember seeing pictures or paintings of discs that had swastikas on it, and they were from way back in the days. So does is that sort of a connection there with that? And also, what about the occult, where I know Hitler, uh, I know he was sort of like friends with Aleister Crowley, and Aleister Crowley would summon this entity called Lamb. How does that connect?
Well, the OTO was involved in NIMSA, and NIMSA was the people that were funding the Sonora Aero Club in Northern California, right? And OTO is the organization, the occult organization that had Aleister Crowley, Jack Dorsey, I believe, and like three or four others that I can't remember their names right off the top of my head.
Right.
But yeah, there's a lot of occult connections to this stuff, and I mean, this is just my theory and my take on what's going on. I think that what happened was is after World War II, the select group of Germans escaped with these kinds of craft. It was like a breakaway civilization, right? They kind of broke away from everybody else. Now, where they went, there's lots of theories and speculation on where they went. Some say that they went to Antarctica. A lot of people,
Yeah.
Argentina. I think they just kind of spread out all over the place, right? And I think what happened was because if you take into consideration Richard E. Byrd's story of him taking his naval fleet to
Colonel Bird, yeah.
Uh, Antarctica in 1947,
Right.
no, 46, I believe. It lasted until 47. It was a very, very short expedition. And he goes to Antarctica with his naval fleet, and he encounters these Nazi um, German people with their advanced craft, right? And their advanced craft basically destroy the entire naval fleet, right? Then he gets back to Chile, and then he makes a statement in Chile whenever he lands. He says, "We're we're eventually going to have to fight a technology that can go pole to pole in the matter of minutes." Right. So this is what I think happened. I think that they realized this. They realized that the Germans that broke away after World War II had highly advanced technology, right? And they were like, okay, well, what are we going to do about this? Like if we can't figure out this technology by bringing all of these Project Paperclip people over into the United States and they can't figure out something, right? Then we're going to be outmanned and outgunned by these crafts, these advanced technology that the Germans have created. So I think what happened was a deal was met. They signed a contract with the breakaway civilization from Germany, and that contract has been overshadowed in this community by the contract with gray ET aliens that Eisenhower made.
Oh, so they substituted this breakaway civilization from Germany with aliens.
Exactly, that's exactly what they did in order to cover up the fact that it was a contract with Nazis
Right.
after World War II, because you can't explain to the people that you just defeated during World War II is somehow back again, and they have advanced technology that would send the public into a frenzy, right? You'd be like, "Oh no, what? We just defeated them, 4 years ago. The war ended in 45, right? They just
Right.
can't all of a sudden just pop back up onto the scene, right? So that whole thing has been memorialized through the mystification of Eisenhower signing a contract with Gray ETs when it was actually a human group with advanced technology, and they signed that contract in order to figure out the highly advanced technology that the Germans had created and turn for human abductions. right?
Right.
That part is real, right? The whole abduction thing, but it's not abductions by ETs. It's abductions by the military. And the easiest way to do that too is if you were going to sign a contract with somebody, you wouldn't have the person that you signed the contract with, doing the abductions. You would want the the other side to do the
Right.
abduction.
Outsource it.
Yeah. So I think that that's basically what happened, and that's there's proof in that with the Betty and Barney Hill case that I was referring to earlier. That Barney was talking about that it was the military. It was the military that abducted them, and then he changed his story into a cover up that it was ETs and extraterrestrials that abducted them, so that they don't have to take responsibility. Now that was either through an influence of three-letter organizations, the military, or it was just an influence by the regressionist, right?
Right.
Because regression can implant thoughts and leading questions and ideas into your head to turn it into something that it's not
Right.
very easily, right?
And this
They
is
could
what
be like,
sucks
oh,
about the. Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Continue. I'm sorry.
they could be like, oh yeah, it was the military. It was the military that abducted me. And then the regressionist can be like, oh, are you sure it wasn't extraterrestrials? And then it puts that in
Right.
the and they're like, oh, well, maybe it was extraterrestrial. I guess it was
They
extraterrestrials,
plant.
right?
They plant that seed, and this is what sucks is and what pisses me off is like we're being lied to because I think it's the niece of Betty and Barney Hill. She never mentions any of that stuff, right? But a part of me thinks that she's very aware of how much money she could possibly make by not revealing that information. I mean, she seems like a nice lady, but now that you're telling me this, and I mean, you're not the first one that has brought this up. The reason why I have guests like you on the show is because this information that I've found myself or I've heard through the grapevine from people other than you. And like we started with synchronicities, I don't believe there's such thing as coincidence. So if you're bringing it up and other people as well that have no connection to you, I mean, it's got to be something. And then, um, what about like something like Travis Walton? Where do you think that's bullshit? Like, because he claims he was on a craft, there was no drugs involved. Apparently, when they were out logging and they were on their way back home and they saw this craft and he winds up getting zapped and then he's on this ship with these beings. Could that be true or is that bullshit too?
Well, I think now again, this is just my personal opinion. There's no
Hey, you're
proof
allowed,
for
man.
any
You're
of
allowed.
this. It's just my, personal, beliefs. So I just want to let people know that it's just conjecture and hyperbole at this point, right? I think that what the government did was they created their own species of being. They created a gray type species to cover up the fact that it's them that's doing the abductions, right? Because
Right.
if it was the military and military uniforms all the time, right, you're going to have some problems there, right? Just like how you had problems with Barney Hill saying that it was the military and then he changed the story, right? So the easiest way to make it not the military is you create your own version of an ET or you dress up as an ET, right? And then you abduct these people. So if they do have some kind of memory lapse of it, they wouldn't be seeing people in military uniforms. You would be seeing what you perceive to be a gray ET or some kind of extraterrestrial species.
Do you ever see that episode of the X Files? I don't know if you ever watched the X Files, and it's I think a two-part series about this guy named Dwayne something where he's getting abducted, but there's a scene where he's like in the bed and he sees these creatures, but then a split second they're people in uniform. So you don't know if he's being abducted by aliens or if he's being abducted by military people, and I think that show was trying to like that showed the whole series, every single series that whole series was trying to tell us something. But the Die Glocke, right? Do you think that maybe that was a version of the Element 115 that Bob Lazar talks about? Like maybe the Element 115 was a modified version of whatever they were using on the Glock, maybe possibly because it sounds very similar. That's the reason why I'm bringing it up.
It kind of gets really convoluted because I really hate to bust people's bubble on this
No, it is.
one,
It has
but
to happen, man. You know.
there's a lot of proof that Bob Lazar was never even a scientist to begin with, right? And that his story has been almost a complete fabrication, and I don't really know too much of, what to believe on the whole Bob Lazar story because it's kind of like everything else, right? It seems like there's a cover up within a cover up within a cover up, right? And the cover up is trying to keep you from figuring out the other cover up, and then there's the backup cover up that's trying to keep you from figuring out the other cover up. And that's probably not the best way to explain it, but I'm not 100% too sure on the whole Bob Lazar story because really anybody that comes out and talks about this kind of stuff that they were a part of a highly classified government program, it's like how are they able to do that, right? They're not going to be able to do that. So parts of his story has to be fabricated in order to even come out and speak about it, right? That's the problem with all this stuff. They're not going to let anybody come out and say the full truth ever. It's never going to be like that. They have to throw in bullshit into their story in order to even be able to come out and speak any of the truth. It's exactly like it's like nonlinear warfare, right? It's exactly like what Alex Jones does, right? Alex Jones is this crazy freaking character that's been, dramatized and turned into something that it's not, right? But it has to be that way in order for him to even come out and put any kind of truth out there, right? Which does another thing to the public too, is that you have to decipher what's real and what's true and what's not, right? And if you have people believing in the fairy tale story, which is what they want people believing in, they don't want you to bring this thing down to earth, right? And talk about real facts and real things that are actual 100% provable.
Right. They don't want
They
you to
want
humanize it.
right. They want you to be talking about space and aliens and extraterrestrials and fighting aliens in space and all of this fairy tale, bullshit nonsense. They don't want you talking about the real stuff that's actually the real programs that's been happening on the planet. Because when you do that, you're getting too close to the truth. So that's why a lot of these whistleblowers and a lot of these, like, especially when it comes to the governmental whistleblowers, like people like Bob Lazar and, other people that are, touting this whole UFO and alien narrative and stuff, a good, you know, 80% of what they're talking about is bullshit and 20% of it is factual, right? It's a muddying of the waters. So nobody knows what's going on, right?
Right.
It's an old school CIA technique to always do that well, in this case it would be two lies and one truth, and then you have to figure out what the truth
Which one
is.
the truth is, right?
Yeah.
Right. That sucks, man. So how does all this play into like this predictive programming sort of psychological warfare that we've been dealing with, but particularly lately we've been kind of bombarded with it.
Well, I did a lot of research into this. I really where a lot of this stuff came from was, you know, listening to these secret space program and super soldier people talk about their experiences, right? And I'm trying to dig down deep. I'm trying to figure out, what's really going on. What
All right.
what is factual here, you know? what is there anything that they're talking about that has any kind of basis in reality, right? Because I almost knew from the very jump that a lot of it is bullshit nonsense, right? But again, you have to dig through it, figure out, is there anything that matches up in real parts of reality, right? And these secret space program people, their story normally always starts out. I don't know if you've listened to them. I'm sure you've had
Okay,
an
so
opportunity to listen to
I
them.
have this written down, okay? And I wanted to talk to you about it. So we already know, so people in the know will get the idea or will probably put the pieces together. We're talking about Corey Good, right? So when I first Corey Good came out of no for me, Corey Good came out of nowhere, and I'm hearing other people say the same thing. He came out of nowhere, but he was attached to Wilcox. Wilcox I knew from Ancient Aliens. Again, didn't know who he was until he was on Ancient Aliens. Um, and then I found out that he claims to be reincarnation of Edgar Casey. But I'm like, anything's possible. I don't know. I don't, what I'm just a regular guy. So I'm following like these breadcrumbs, but then Corey Good's story comes out, and then I'm a little bit leery about it. It sounds very fantastical, but who am I to judge? And then he's attached to Emery Smith, and then they form like this sort of like this little group, you know, and they start getting all these followers. But I'm not believing a lot of what they're saying. So who is Corey Good, and where did he come from? Let's start there.
Well, the thing about it is I've never even listened to anything Corey Good has ever done. I've never listened to one interview, one episode of Cosmic Disclosure on Gaia or anything, but somehow I know his entire story.
Well, I mean, because
Right?
he was on like being interviewed. I'm pretty sure he was on Coast to Coast. I know he was on Fade to Black with Jimmy Church. So if you're fans of like those shows, you want to hear new people's stories and stuff. So you have no choice but to kind of hear their stories and to kind of first get introduced to them. But there's always an origin story to somebody, and he came out of nowhere. Like I said, I don't know who he is, where he's from, what his upbringing is, if he has any connections to the military or anything like that. If he's part of any other sort of programs. So, what have you found? Let's start there. What have you found out?
Well, my point to saying that I've never listened to anything that Corey Good has ever talked about is that, and saying that, but I know his entire story is because everyone has taken his story and turned it into their own thing and compounded upon it and talking about the secret space program and the 20 and back and dark fleet and all this nonsense. They all talk about almost the exact same thing. So Corey Good started in 2012. 2012 was one of the first year that Corey Good came out and did any interviews online. He started out on this online forum called Project Avalon, which was a offshoot of Project Camelot with Kerry Cassidy. When Bill Ryan and Kerry Cassidy split, Bill Ryan created this new forum called Project Avalon, which is an offshoot of Project Camelot. And he was on this forum, talking about, a lot of this stuff and basically gathering a story is really what he was doing. He was trying to put pieces together to create his whole secret space program 20 and back story, right? And there's actually screenshots online of him saying that he didn't believe that he was a part of any of these programs back in like 2013. Right
Wow.
there, yeah, there's a screenshot that says that. Hold on, let me see if I can find it because
Yeah, yeah, please.
it's really, really interesting. Oh yeah, right here it is. Corey states, I came from a long line of military intel family. I have been told by MIL and CIV people that I am a MILAB, but I do not quite buy it. No memories of that stuff. Wife says I act out battle scenarios and shout orders in my sleep, but I was an intel communications guy, so I chalk that up to watching many movies and listening to too many war stories, right?
Right.
You probably can't see it, but you probably can't read it. But there it is. So he hooks up with David Wilcock after this period of time. And the funny thing about it is Shane the Ruiner was also in talks with David Wilcock, right? Shane the Ruiner basically could have been Corey Good.
Right.
Listen,
I know.
you
I've
know.
spoken to Shane. Yeah.
So he hooks up with David Wilcock. David Wilcock is in with Gaia, right? So David Wilcock comes to Corey. They start this whole show, huge show, made Gaia millions of dollars, made Corey thousands of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars, right?
Right.
So Corey Good and David Wilcock have like a split from Gaia around 2018, I believe. Don't quote me on that because I'm not 100% sure. But they kind of have a split from Gaia around that time, not a good split. So Corey Good and David Wilcock leave. There are a group of individuals, probably around 4 individuals that started coming out saying that Corey Good's information, his stories were all made up. They were all fake, right? So Corey Good gets pissed off and he's like, well, I'm just going to sue all of these people, all of these detractors, all of these people that are saying that my stories are fake and made up, right? Because I'm losing money, because this is what it's all about for Corey is money, right? It's all about how much money can I make off of my fake made up stories, right? I was making millions of dollars before, and now I'm only making
Hundreds of thousands, right?
hundreds of thousands of dollars, right? Or tens of thousands of dollars, and he's pissed off about that. And he uses the people, his detractors, and the people that are saying that his stories are fake and made up as a reason for why he's not making that much money anymore, right? So then he decides to sue these people, takes them to court. They have a deposition, right? There's a deposition that happens before the court case actually happens so that the deposition can be referred to in court. So his lawyer doesn't file the right paperwork from my understanding, right? This is just hearsay and kind of, I'm just trying to give you the story of kind of what
Right.
happened.
Ryder, real quick, is he still partners with Wilcox at this time?
I think so. David Wilcox kind of went off on his own little thing. He's just kind of by himself now. He doesn't really do. He just wrote a book or something that just got released like last week or a couple of weeks ago or something like that. But this is really recent. What I'm talking about this deposition thing. This was only like maybe a month ago,
Oh,
less than a month
wow.
ago.
Okay. That's crazy.
So he's in court. He does this deposition. His lawyer doesn't file the right paperwork to make the deposition videos not public, right? Because you have the ability to do that. Like whenever you're in a court deposition for a court, the deposition videos always become public. And she didn't do the right, because you can't just coat the entire 6-hour deposition videos with saying that it's all going to be that no one else can see it, that it can't be made public, right? You have to go in and cut out the parts of the video that you don't want to be made public, right?
Right.
And she didn't do that. So after 30 days,
It becomes public.
it becomes public.
Oh, shit.
Right? So all 6 of those deposition videos of Corey Good became public awareness. And he
Have you seen them?
Seen all of them.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Watched all of them several times. And Stephen Cambion from Truth Seekers actually has all of them on his YouTube channel, and he also has commentary with them as well. I'm actually bringing him on my show next week. So basically in this deposition video, I've covered this a few times. So I've watched him several times. I basically know exactly, what he said. So the third deposition video is the most damning for him and his story, right? The third one was released first. It was released on Vimeo first, and people thought that was the first one, but there was actually 5 others, and there was 2 before the third one. So the third one was released first. That was the first one that I seen. And then after the other ones were released, I went back and watched all of them. But it's the most damning, most incriminating deposition that I think that I've ever witnessed or ever seen before, right? So the defense attorney asked Corey all of these questions regarding his story, right? And this is really what I'm going to focus on. There's a lot more within it that has to do with financial stuff and his business propositions and things, but that's not what I'm going to concentrate on here. I'm concentrating on his actual story. So the deposition lawyer asked me, he's like, Corey, you claim to talk to these blue avians. Well, he says Ashar, which Ashar is apparently this physical entity that Corey Good physically talks to from inner Earth. He's an inner Earth extraterrestrial, basically, right? And Corey says, well, Ashar is a part of my intellectual property, and he has a book in his hand, which is a comic book that he wrote, right? And he's using this comic book as his defense to make it a part of his trademark and his intellectual property, right? He's like, oh, well, it's a part of my meditation practice, right? Like it's not a real physical being. It's a part of my meditation. Whenever I go in and I connect to Ashar through meditation, right? And then the defense attorney is asking him, well, is it physical? And he's like, no, it's not physical. It's a part of my intellectual property in my book. And then he goes on and he basically says that the 20 and back program is a part of his intellectual property. It didn't necessarily happen, but it's a part of his story in his book. That Dark Fleet was a part of his creation. That was in his book. That nobody was talking about Dark Fleet before he talked about it in 2015, and that he never physically went to space. Right. And it's the most damning thing, because if you know anything about Corey Good and all these other subsequent secret space program people that came out after him, they're all making people believe that all of these experiences were physical experiences. Right. And he's saying under oath in court in a deposition that none of these experiences that he's ever had were physical experiences, that he never physically went to space. He wasn't age regressed back 20 years to the very point that he was taken. So it's like he's just created, he's fabricated
Right.
all of these things, and he's frauding the public. You've been frauding the public for 8 years, coming out and saying that all of these stories, these space adventures, these fighting aliens in space for 20 years and being age regressed back to the very point that you were taken weren't physical experiences. They were part of your imagination, part of your intellectual property that you have in your comic book.
Now, was all that original, that story? Because I heard through the grapevine that some of those things that he was saying was stolen from somebody else.
Well, a lot of people have been pointing to Randy Kramer inventing the 20 and back program, which is not true. Randy Kramer came out in August of 2014. He, in his first interview, was with Michael Salla, which Michael Salla is the biggest fraud of like all of them. Right, he's the one that's been propping up all of these secret space program and super soldier whistleblowers and verifying that their stories are true. And he verified Corey Good's story as well, like back in 2015. So Randy and Corey Good came out in his first interview was in 2012. So that's 2 years before Randy Kramer came out and started talking about it. Now, there are things that have been talked about, like Solar Warden was in a book. I can't remember the author's name, but he did talk about Solar Warden. But Corey Good never said anything about Solar Warden or any of those other things that had really been previously talked about. So I think that maybe his trademarks might actually go through. He might actually get a lot of his trademark properties, which, hey, I kind of hope that he does, right? Because that makes it to where none of these other people, none of these other secret space program bullshit nonsense
Right.
people can continue talking about it. It kind of just shuts down the entire thing. And he referred to in this deposition that this industry is $1 billion industry, right? It's just a money thing to him. All of it is nothing about truth. It's his stories are made up. They're part of his intellectual property. None of it's real. And another thing that he talked about, because the deposition lawyer, the defense attorney, asked him, he said, "Do you put a footnote in your book that these stories are fake and that they're made up?" Right? And Corey lifts up his book and he says, "Yes, there's a distinction that's made between Corey Good, the real Corey Good in this reality, and then the embellished Corey Good that has, done all of these secret space program adventures." And he basically tells people right then and there that the stories that he's been talking about for 8 years have been fake, made up, not real, non-physical experiences. And the thing about this was too is that I actually had this information back like 2 months ago. That his stories and that he went to a court deposition and said that his stories and everything were all made up, but I couldn't release the video because it was the person that told me this was involved in the
Like
court case
legal
directly.
stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. I got you. So what it sounds like to me is if Corey Good would have just created some sort of science fiction company and then made movies and comic books, he would have been better off doing that.
Exactly. And that's what he should have done from the very beginning, right? He should have came out and been like, "Hey, my experiences weren't real physical experiences. They were channeled, they were astral experiences, they were whatever." And none of this would be happening, right? Because people would have that information from the jump. Where he screwed up was trying to convince people that his stories were real, physical, actually happening in this 3D physical reality, right? If he would have came out from the very beginning and been like, "Hey, none of these experiences were physical experiences, but here it is," right? There wouldn't have, never have been any issue. But he didn't. He didn't say that. So he frauded the public for 8 years, making everyone believe and making hundreds of thousands of dollars off of a story that he had people believing in that was a physical, real story.
Right.
I think there's laws against that. I'm not 100% sure, but I don't think that you can do that. And there's plenty of examples. He's a public figure, right? He's been on several shows, just like you mentioned. He was on Jimmy Church's show. He's been through all these conferences. He's been on, I can't think of the other big show that he was on, but he was on Jimmy Church several times. And the thing about this whole thing is like, what about these people that supported him through all of this, right? James Gilliland supported him. Peter Maxwell Slattery supported him. Edge of Wonder guys supported him, gave him a platform to speak his fake made up stories.
Wow.
None of them have come out and made any statements
Right.
about supporting someone that has absolutely zero proof and has admitted under oath in a court deposition that his stories are fake and made up. And it didn't physically happen, right?
So
And then
do you think James Gilliland's fake too with the whole ESETI ranch? Because sometimes I feel like I make this statement sometimes, right? Because I grew up in the ghetto, that ghetto kids hang out with ghetto kids, So I mean, thieves hang out with thieves, right? So do you think like Gilliland and like Greer and all these guys that are making tons of money, they recognize that Corey Good was just another thief that they can team up with, and because Emery Smith's part of that, he's connected to that, those guys.
I think so to a degree, because when everyone was coming on and saying that, Corey Good's stories were fake and made up and none of it was real, there was only a select few people that continued to back him and bring him on their shows, right? And one of those people was James Gilliland, right? And I've heard things about James too, that he's faking a lot of his UFO activity, that he just has people out there with laser pointers and lights and stuff and shining them in the sky. Which, another interesting thing is that there's a military base right across that mountain there in
Right.
Washington where he shoots all of those uh, UFO videos, right?
Right.
So, I mean, I can't say 100% for sure because I've never been there. I've never spoken with him. And I really don't know too much about it. I'm just speaking about what other people have told me, and
Right.
others that have been there, that's been to his sky watches and stuff, tell me that he's faking it.
Right. But you
Right?
have a sense that there's something up. Like you smell something funny. And usually when you smell something funny, because I've seen pictures that he put up, James Gilliland talking about him, pictures of beings that he says come to him. I mean, it could be true, but it's just now that he's connected with Corey Good and Wilcox, you have no choice but to wonder, man, this guy fucking with us too. Is he another one?
Yeah, James Gilliland is definitely a opportunist, right? If you don't have anything to, give him in return, then he doesn't mess with you, right? If you're not big in the community, if you don't have something to, give him in return, then he just doesn't do anything for you. I've heard that several times in many people, and he's really touchy with the women, from what I've heard. He
Oh,
only has basically women working on his ranch for free. He's not
but
paying any
but
of
not
those
really
people
for
that.
free. Probably not really for free. There's gotta be some form of payment. I'm pretty sure,
Yeah,
which
exactly. So
sucks. Yeah.
there's a lot of sketchy stuff going on with him. And as far as like Stephen Greer, the thing that I don't like about Stephen Greer is he basically only talks about the same thing over and over and over again. Every one of his documentaries that he's ever came out with, like there's little to no new information in any of those documentaries. He's just regurgitating
Right.
the same things that he's said over and over and over again. Now, I do give credit to and unsubstantiated evidence, right? There's really no proof for a lot of the things that Stephen Greer has said. And I think that he was responsible for the Wilson document getting leaked, and then it turns out that the Wilson document, people have tracked back the Wilson document, and it turned out that it came from his computer. So he basically manufactured and created that entire fake document. So it, now there was one thing that I did like that Stephen Greer has said, which was that the military is abducting people. Right? They're putting on fake ET get up, and they're abducting citizens, they're abducting politicians and all this, and that it's a governmental abduction, physical abduction, which I agree with, and that's
Right.
what I've been saying for a really, really long time now. So, but yeah, Stephen Greer, definitely some sketchy things going on with him too. Really, whenever you dig into a lot of these people, Chris, like it turns out that, and it's sad, right? Because we
Sucks.
we come into this community and we think that these people aren't going to be lying to us, because we think that this is a safe place for us to come to discuss our thoughts, theories, and conjecture, and expanding our mind and expanding our consciousness and asking questions that people really haven't thought about before, right? When you dig into a lot of these people, dude, it turns out that they're frauds, they're scammers, they're
Right.
fakes, and there's way more things that's going on underneath the surface, and a lot of it is just for money, right? That's
Right.
their main thing, right? Is scamming the public to try and get as much money from them as possible. And you can always tell that by the people that come out and are always trying to sell you something, right? Like, buy my course. That's a big one.
Yeah.
Buy my Ascension 5D course right now, or my meditation course, but grab my meditation course. It's $250. You know, those people are just in it for the money, right? They don't care about really anything else. And 9 times out of 10, it's all made up bullshit. And they didn't even write it. And that's the case with Corey Good. His first course that he made hundreds of thousands of dollars off of, he didn't even write. He didn't even write that course. He had someone else write it for him, right? And he just sits back and he collects all the money. So the people that are constantly, trying to sell you something is the ones that are normally the most popular, which it should be the other way around, right? Like sometimes I ask for donations on my channel, right? Because we do have to make some kind of money doing this. Like we have to try and make some kind of living, right? But I'm not scamming people, telling them that I'm going to give them something for giving me some kind of money. I'm not pushing any kind of ascension course to 5D. I'm not saying that I can take you up in an alien spaceship and heal you with their advanced med bed technology and all that hokey bullshit. Like if you want to donate to me, then I appreciate you donating to me, right? Like you're doing it out of the kindness of your heart. And I feel like if more people would do that and support the real researchers and the people that are trying and doing their best to try and come to the absolute truth of the matter, then we could pretty much get rid of all of the bullshit nonsense that people are spewing, right? But unfortunately, it's not like that. People they don't want to donate to anybody or give anybody money that they don't feel like that they're getting something in return out of, but they really are getting something in return, right? They're getting the closest that we can possibly come to figuring out any kind of truth, but they keep propping up these frauds and these fakes and the people that are only in it for the money. I mean, that's where the confusion and all the bullshit comes in.
Isn't there like this ritual in the occult where they kind of throw something in your face, like part of a truth, and because they do that, they're they kind of don't have to suffer the karma that comes back to them?
Yeah, that's an old trick too, and it's done to um
And the reason why I say that
let
is because of what you said with Stephen Greer. Some of his stuff like that he regurgitates, but one of the things that you did like was him saying that military abduct. So by admitting that the military abduct, that's kind of like their way of saying we do this, but we're admitting it in a way, just to kind of not suffer that karma because we're being honest with you in a way.
Yeah, I think that's a good way that a good trick that they can use to get away with the things that they're doing, right? Like is to throw some truth and some knowledge mixed in there, right? And then hopefully people don't dig too much into that truth and that real knowledge that they're giving, and they only dig into the bullshit nonsense. But it's an easy way to um, get away with something that you're trying to do. Let's use the example of like mainstream media, right? Mainstream media can all they have to do is put out a thought and an idea or a proposal or something, or create something, or create an event, right? And they put it on TV, and when they put it on TV, it gets people to believe in that thought, that idea, or that manufactured event, right? And when people believe in that, it becomes a part of their reality, right? It becomes an egregore, it's egregorical reality. And I think that's how our entire reality is set up. It's egregorically. If you don't know what the term egregore is it's a entity or a belief that becomes real based on the energy and the belief and the thought power that you put into it, right? So something doesn't have to be real in order for people to believe that it is real,
Right.
right? And they know this, like the definitely the the ones that are in charge of our reality, that are making the decisions and all that, know this, and they use it all the time. Nothing has to be real in order for to get people to believe in it, right? If you look at 2020, that's a prime example of how it works, right? They just put out a thought and an idea, beam it at you 24/7, all the time, every day, and then it becomes a part of your reality. And that's what Corey Good has done with his entire story, right? All of these other people have popped up after Corey Good, talking about almost the exact same thing that Corey Good was talking about, right?
Who are these
He,
people? Do you know? Do you have any names of who's recently come out, pretty much
well,
stealing his shit?
there's more. There's people that's come out there that are coming out every single day,
Okay, okay. So
about
too
it. So
many.
it's a constant carousel effect of just people coming in and out and in and out and talking about their experiences in the secret space program and the super soldiers and all that. One of the big ones is James Rink. James Rink on Super Soldier Talk. He's been doing this for a long time, and he has been creating these people. He's created these super soldiers and these SSP assets. Right. That's like his job.
Right.
That's what he does. People come in and pay him money to get a regression. And we already talked about regression earlier, how they can manipulate you and plant thoughts and ideas into your head. So people go onto his website, pay him, I think, $200. It might be more now or less now. I'm not 100% sure, to get a regression with James Rink. And then James Rink will regress you. And if you talk anything about the secret space program or anything that he's ever regurgitated before on his show, then he brings you on his show. He's a gatekeeper. He's a gatekeeper. That's what it is. And you pay him money to receive your fake super soldier and your fake SSP memories, and then he props you up. He's done that with several people over the years. He's just creating them and fabricating them out of thin air, right? And it's the people that watch his show. So what they do is you go to sleep at night, you have James Rink Super Soldier Talk playing on your TV or on your phone or whatever, you're listening to it. You have some sort of dream about it. You wake up the next morning and you're like, holy shit, I was a part of this program too. So then you get on there and you pay James Rink $200. You do a regression, and then you tell him about your fantastical fighting aliens in space for 20 years. He brings you on your show, brings you on his show, and gives you a platform to speak about the things that he regressed you on. And then he's created another fucking super soldier.
Right. He lets them loose to do, yeah. Right.
Speaking nonsense and bullshit. And that's how all this has happened. That's how all these people claim to have, had these experiences, is by listening to other people that has supposedly had these experiences that have absolutely zero proof. That is a result of some kind of MK Ultra V2K experience that's been planted in their mind from their dream state, or they're using their testimony and they're using supporting testimony from other people that they've heard talk about it in order to support their own story. That's how it goes.
So do you think that there's any part of what Corey said that might be true, that possibly could be true, any of his stories, that maybe maybe he was told a few things that were true and he turned it into like a story, but it's actually true? Like the secret space program, anything?
I did a deep dive into this because I was onto this way before the deposition videos came out. I was, trying to figure out what's real, what's the real part of these people's stories, what is completely fabrication, right? And because I've interviewed some of these people, I've interviewed Ileana, the Star Traveler. I've interviewed Tony Rodriguez. Penny Bradley, and I also interviewed James Rink, like back when I first started my show, right?
Right.
And I wanted to, try and figure out exactly what's going on because that was my whole mission and my whole goal from the very beginning. And I had to talk to them and to try and figure out what was happening here because I knew it wasn't the way that they were saying what was going on, right? So the beginning parts of their story always starts out with some kind of MK Ultra story, right? It's they were abducted as a young kid. They were taken to a military base or a three-letter agency base somewhere. They were MK Ultra. They were tortured. They were starved. Their mind was fractured several times to create these kinds of alters. And then they were taken through a jump room in New York or California. It differs with each individual's, and they immediately go to Mars and or the moon or Jupiter or whatever, right? Which is another thing in the deposition videos that the defense attorney asked. He said, "Have you ever lived on another planet, Corey?" And Corey said, "No, I've never claimed to have lived on another planet." He says, "Well, have you ever visited another planet?" And he said, "Well, in the stories in my book, I have visited other planets that aren't even a part of this solar system." And then the defense attorney asked, "Well, did you ever physically go to these other planets?" And he said, "No, I don't believe so." So going through all this stuff, and I'm trying to figure out what's going on here because we know that MK Ultra is real. Like that was real programs. There's declassified sub projects of MK Ultra that's been released to the public that you can go in and actually research and look at, right? And you see that all these MK Ultra programs all involve some sort of hallucinogenic that they're testing on people, right? And the very first mission or goal of MK Ultra was to make soldiers or people that have high intelligence data, high up intelligence data, to erase that out of their head, right? So that whenever they quit the force, they don't have access to any of those classified programs or those classified things. So they used a drug called BZ. And BZ is like like 100 times more powerful than LSD. It'll make you literally go out of your mind for like weeks at a time. You don't know who you are, where you are, what you're doing, nothing, right? So then they use this technique that's called depatterning, which depatterning is a way to just kind of clean the slate of your mind, right? Clean your consciousness to remove common sense and critical thinking, right? And then they use another technique that's called psychic driving, which psychic driving is the way that it's described in the MK Ultra declassified files is that it's used with a repeated audio looped message. So they drug them, they depattern them, they throw them in a room with a repeated looped audio message. Nobody knows what's on this repeated looped audio message. It could be anything, right? It's to convince the person that you're MK altering of whatever is on that audio message, right? And I've taken this a step further. I've taken it to where they could also use a TV, right? They can wheel a TV in there after they've drugged them, after they've depatterned them. Then they psychic drive them or wheel a TV, or they put like goggles over them, like a VR headset, like we would have now, right? And to convince them of whatever is on this VR goggles or whatever is on this TV or whatever is on this audio looped message, right? So, but no one knows what was on any of those audio looped messages or on the TV screen or on the VR headset thing, right? It could be anything. It could be that, oh, you were in space fighting aliens for 20 years and then we age regressed you back to this very point, but it was you were really only in a room drugged up, depatterned, and psychic drive to believe it, right? So then another thing that that the secret space program and super soldiers talk about is this Stargate project, right? And they equate it to being, the super ultra secret military operation that opens up portals and looks back in time and looks forward in time, and that has stuff to do with an actual Stargate, right? Like Stargate, the TV show,
Right.
which a lot of this, dude, is all comes from movies and TV shows that they've just compounded upon over and over and over again, right? They always refer to like X-Men too, right? Well, guess what was the most popular cartoon during the 90s and the early 2000s on Fox on Channel
X-Men.
11? It was the
Yeah.
X-Men,
Yeah.
right? So, which I love, by the way. I love that
Yeah.
X-Men cartoon.
Yeah, the guitar solo on
So they've just taken these things and they've because the way the trauma works, right? You can be traumatized and then you will use something that happened in your past of a good memory or something to try and get out of that trauma, right? So if subconsciously you have X-Men or the Stargate TV show or Star Trek or Star Wars or anything, and you had a really good time watching that stuff, and then you get traumatized later on in life, you're going to revert back to that, and you're going to take that as actually being real, right? That you were a part of all this stuff, right? When it was really just a TV show. But anyway, Stargate. So Stargate was a real governmental sanction and functioned program, but it was nothing like what these people talk about it, about what it is, right? It was an actual governmental program to study ESP, psychic abilities, and remote viewing, right? The funding for that started in 1972 when the CIA was funding SRI International, which was also studying psychics, remote viewers, and telekinesis and channeling abilities. Then it even goes back farther than that. The CIA was actually studying psychic phenomenon, ESP, remote viewing, and telekinesis back in the MK Ultra programs. You can go through those declassified MK Ultra programs. There's at least 4 sub projects where Sidney Gottlieb was studying ESP, remote viewing, and psychic abilities, right?
Was there a connection by any chance, Ryder? Have you made any connection to that and the Montauk project?
I really haven't looked too deep into the Montauk project, but I do know that the Montauk project was started because a man liked to uh, strap little boys into a chair and jerk off in front of them.
Okay.
All right.
I didn't know
So,
that.
yeah, that's how the whole Montauk thing started, and it became like a whole thing, and they turned that into all about this secret space program and time travel and all this
And then
hokey
Stranger
shit.
Things. It became Stranger Things eventually. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the origin of the Montauk project. It came from a gentleman that would do
Sick.
that to little boys. So the Stargate project. So after the CIA stopped its MK Ultra stuff, the CIA decided to fund SRI International, which was previously uh, Stanford Research Institute, and then they changed their name to whenever they broke apart from Stanford, they changed it to SRI International in 1972. So then, after the CIA was funding this psychic abilities and ESP research from SRI International, uh, the Army intelligence decided to create their own study and research of ESP abilities and psychics and remote viewers, and that started in 1975. And then it got transferred from a Army intelligence program to a DIA program, and it became a special access program in 1979. And it ran all the way up until 1995 when the CIA was supposed to take it back over, but they instead shut it down. They came out and said, "Oh well, there was no valuable intelligence data that was ever collected from this program, right?" Which the program went under different names throughout its history and throughout its infancy. It wasn't always called the Stargate Project. It went by many different code names, right? Just how I think that Solar Warden was Space Force before Space Force was Space Force, right? It was just a code name for the militarization of space. Right. So then I'm thinking, I'm interviewing all these people from the Stargate project, like verified people that were in it, like Lynn Buchanan, Angela Ford, Dr. David Morehouse, and Dale Graff. They were all verified in the Stargate project. They're all remote viewers that were working for the intelligence community to collect intelligence data during the Cold War, all the way up until I think Angela Ford was the only one that I've interviewed that stayed all the way until '95 when the CIA shut it down. So I'm thinking, well, why would a three-letter organization or even the military keep a project running for 18 years and then come out and say that no valuable intelligence data was ever collected, right? That doesn't make any sense. Why would you keep something running for that long and then come out and say that you've never seen any good results from it, right? So I'm thinking, and I interviewed Lynn Buchanan, and Lynn Buchanan is like, hey, like I was approached by these men in black government officials that came to me and asked me, they asked me if I could take out somebody with my mind, right? They asked, hey, could you kill this person with your mind? We have a target. Can you kill them? And he refused. And then I asked him in that interview, anybody that's interested could go and watch that interview. I asked him, I said, well, could you have killed him with your mind? And I know you said that you didn't do it, but is a possibility there, right? Could you have done it? And he said, yes. He said, yes, I could have killed the target that they wanted me to kill with my mind. And I'm like, okay, this makes a lot more sense now,
Did
right?
he tell you how he could do it?
Well, it's a way that you can remote view and actually raise someone's blood pressure to such a point that they go into cardiac arrest
Wow.
or they have a heart attack.
Wow.
It would be the easiest way
Right.
to do it. Um, so I was like, okay, well, this makes a lot of sense now, you
Yeah.
know? So they shut down the program in 95. And I think that this program evolved. It evolved into something way more sinister and way more intrusive on people, right? And there's evidence for this if you look at the world that we're currently in right now, right? I think that this Stargate project evolved from collecting intelligence data on other countries and maybe even possibly our own countries. It evolved into a psychic assassin program, into a remote controlling program or remote influencing program.
Like a Manchurian candidate sort of thing.
Sort of, but not with the MK Ultra aspect of the Manchurian candidate, right? This would be like a remote thing. Like it would
Right.
be like me sitting here in my house and then me remote viewing and putting thoughts and ideas into your head to make you do something that you wouldn't otherwise do,
Right.
right?
Right.
And my thought was, well, just killing somebody outright is kind of a lazy way to do it, right? You're not just going to want to, kill someone outright unless they're a huge problem, like unless they're like a huge issue and you just want to get rid of them, right? The best way to do it would be to convince somebody else to go out and do the murder and the assassination for you. Instead of killing the target outright, you would want to remote control, remote influence somebody else to do it, right? It would be like me remote influencing and putting thoughts and ideas into your head to go to Walmart and murder somebody,
Right.
right? Or a school,
Right. Oh,
right?
oh, yeah. I just had a thought about because we talked about religion and how there's things with religion that are weird. What if possessions, person that's supposed to be possessed by a demon isn't really a demon? It's a remote viewer projecting something into that person to make them seem like they're have a demon in them. And then so let's say like I'm mad at you and you have a daughter and I want to get back at you, I possess your daughter, so to speak, or something like that. Wow, that's fucking crazy.
Absolutely, and it's really scary, the implications of that and what that could really entail. And like I said, if you just look at our reality since 2000, you can see lots of evidence of that. And I'm not going to, point it out, but just use your imagination, right? Think, oh, well, what are all these shootings really about?
Right.
What's going on here? Could this possibly be a infiltration into somebody's mind? So, because if you think about it, that's the easiest way to have the most political upheaval ever, right? Is to have somebody else assassinate or kill somebody else and not just them die of random natural causes, right? It's kind of like, you know, uh, Osama bin Laden just dying in a cave, right? No one cares if Osama bin Laden died in a cave, right? They got to have SEAL Team 6 come in there and take him out so we can go hoorah, United States, right?
Right.
It's the same type of example here, right? You don't want to just take somebody out. You want to have somebody else take somebody out, right? Because it looks better for, optically and reporting on it better, right? So again, I think that this whole thing changed again. I think it evolved once more. And we have evidence for that as well. I think that they completely took humans out of the equation. They probably maybe around 8 to 10 years into this new psychic assassin type of program, remote control program, remote influencing program. They switched it up again and they completely cut humans out of it and they turned that into a technology, which is echoed by what Shane the Ruiner has spoken on many occasions. He says that the programs are actually for duplicating people's abilities into a technology, right? And I think that that's what they've done. They turn the remote viewing, the remote influencing, the remote assassinations, the remote controlling people into a technology, right? To where they don't have to deal with humans anymore. They just flip a switch and they can plant thoughts and ideas and basically control people into doing something that they normally wouldn't do after hitting them with it several times, right?
Right. So
Directed
like a
energy weapon.
tool, like a tool, like a specific tool.
That's what V2K is. That's what you can look up V2K. It's a very real technology that's used by the military and three-letter organizations that can literally plant thoughts, ideas, and beliefs into your head. Right? They can infiltrate into your mind and plant thoughts, ideas, and beliefs. There's patents for this. It's in use. It's currently in use. They're using it right now.
Yeah.
Right? And they've been doing that to a large percentage of the population. And that is another way to plant thoughts and ideas into people's heads surrounding anything. Right. And I think that that's a big way that they have created these secret space program assets and super soldiers as well. They're just hitting them with V2K all the time and making them believe that they were in these programs. Like they no longer have to abduct anybody or have volunteers for any of these MK Ultra programs. They just do it out in the open now,
Right.
right? They don't have to have anybody in a facility anymore. They already figured that out. They already did that. They've already turned it into something completely different to where that they can just do open air testing on everyone, right? In order to cover up the real shit and the real programs that they're doing and what we might actually be doing in space, like the militarization of space, right? But instead, the cover is that it's these extraterrestrials and there's wars and all this shit going on in space and there's crazy ET Mars bases underground and like all this shit. It's to cover up what's really happening. And the
Happening.
easiest
Right.
way to do that is to convince people that they're a part of some fairy tale space adventure.
So, have you heard of a individual named Crow 777?
I am aware of him, but I am not really aware of his work too much. I think I've heard him on a couple of shows way back in the day.
Right. Okay, because he brought up something interesting about space being actually liquid, because he filmed an anomaly. He thought he was the only one to film this anomaly, but he found out that other people called a lunar wave. Um, but do you believe that there's such thing as space? Do you believe that man has been in space, has been to other planets, moon, etc.?
It's a really,
I know it's
it's a,
tough. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to throw that out
it's
there.
a, it's a, it's a really tough thing. I don't really know because on one hand, it seems like it's possible, but the lies just
Keep coming.
accumulate.
Right,
Yeah, like if they're lying to us about everything else, then why aren't they lying to us
right,
about space? Why would they be telling us the truth about space? They're making up all these stories and cover stories for all this other shit. So why would they ever be telling us the truth about space? So I'm kind of up in the air on it. I'm not 100% sure, but I do know that um, there's proof that, well, not proof. It's a scripture, which again is can't be taken as literal fact. But in Genesis, it talks about how God separated the waters from above from the waters below, right? And I think that space is kind of like a cover, right? Because when people say space, they what are they referring to, right? Space can be anything. Space can be extra space in your house, right? Space could be the ocean, you know, and they've transitioned out of saying outer space.
right. They
Outer
took the
space is a
outer part out of it. Yes.
yeah. They've completely taken the outer out, and they're just referring to it as space, right? And again, space can be anything. Now, when you're talking about outer space, that's a different story. I think that a lot of this stuff is inner space. We go within, and then that's how we get to outer space.
Right.
But I don't know. I think it's a high possibility, maybe that we built some kind of anti-gravity craft that somehow got us to the moon or to Mars already. Maybe. I don't know. I really don't know how space works or what's
Right.
going on out there. I don't think that our bodies are fit in the current state to be in space. And I think that that's why they're pushing this transhumanist movement and the combination of cyborgs and augmenting us into a more of a robot kind of reality, because our physical 3D human bodies aren't meant to travel in space or be on another planet. So we would have to have some kind of augmentation to be able to,
For it,
survive or
for it
be
not
in
to affect
space.
us. Right.
Yeah.
So, what are your thoughts on man? We could go on forever. All right. So let me go this route, because I know that I heard you on an interview before, and you had an interesting view on our planet. Because you have the whole flat Earth people versus the ball Earth, but you introduced something different, and I really liked how you brought that up. Can you talk? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Which one was that on? I've done
I think it was
several
for
interviews
Forbidden Knowledge News. I think you had brought up like this
that
o-
were.
oval sort of.
Well, I think I think that we're only on a certain portion of the Earth, right? Kind of like how we only see the face of the moon, right? The moon doesn't rotate; you just see the front part of the moon. There's a whole backside to the
Correct.
moon. I think that we all the places that we know are on the front side of the planet, right? And that's possibly why it's perceived to be flat because we haven't ever been to
To
the
the
other side of the
backside.
planet. Yeah.
Right.
And who knows what's back there? Probably an entire whole other civilization of humans, right? But it kind of makes sense in the way that if you think of all the other countries that we know about, right? South America, Australia, China, Russia, Turkey, all these places are just on one portion of the planet. They're not on the opposite side. China wouldn't be all the way on the opposite side of the planet, right?
Right. Right. It wouldn't be like that cartoon where you dig through America and you wind up in China.
Yeah,
We're all what you feel is we're all on the same plane, and then there's another plane on the other side
yeah,
that who knows what's there.
yeah.
Right. Could be
And
more
that's,
land.
yeah, exactly. More land, more people, different race of beings that look similar.
Aliens.
I mean, I mean, wouldn't technically be aliens because they're still on the same planet. They would still be terrestrial.
Right.
Right? Just like,
But if a person crosses from Mexico to the United States, he's an alien.
right. Well, yeah,
You know.
foreign to
I know
us in that
I'm
aspect.
messing. I'm messing.
Foreign, but not extraterrestrial
I got you.
or alien, because I think that's the cover up, and the big thing is that they're talking about aliens and extraterrestrials when they're not. You know, they're if there is such a thing as an alien or an extraterrestrial, they're not physical. They're not coming here. Right?
Right.
If it's something from outside of our planet, then it's not a physical phenomenon. But if somehow it is a physical phenomenon, then they're from the planet. They're terrestrial, right?
Right.
And just because they were to look different than us doesn't mean that they're not from here. Doesn't mean that they're not a terrestrial species. Because I do believe that there are other humanoid type of beings on the planet, and it only really makes sense, and you're thinking critically and common sense about it. I mean, there's lots of proofs of giants, right? Giants being on the planet. There's skeletal remains of giant humanoids, right?
Right.
Are they extraterrestrial? Are they extraterrestrial because they look different than us? Because they're taller? They might be 15 to 20 feet tall?
Right.
No,
Yeah, I got you.
they're terrestrial. They're from the planet. They came from here.
So what
So
is your
there's
stance on like Bigfoot and Sasquatch? Are they us?
that's a really difficult one too that I
You
haven't.
believe in it at all?
I believe it's possible that some ancient humanoid uh, species was left over from our ancient past, because I believe that we've been to this point in our history several times before. That we've been to this exact point, probably hundreds of times. You know, it's a rise and a fall of civilization, right? We get to a peak point. As far as we get, something happens, it all crumbles, and we start over again. You know, it's
Right.
it's just a rise. It's just the way that the planet works. And sometimes we get a golden age of humanity. Sometimes we get a negative regress stage, but nothing lasts forever here. It's a duality here. We have to have the dark and we have to have the light. That's a part of being in this 3D physical reality. Nothing's ever going to be heaven on earth here for very long, right? Now we might get a period of time, a couple thousand years of everything being peaceful and advanced, but there's always a opposition to that rises up, that collapses and destroys everything. And it works the opposite way too. Like when everything's super negative and super shitty and everything, the light rises to take out the negative and super shitty, and then it's good, golden age for a while, and then the negative rises back up and takes down the good, and then it just starts all over. It's a constant back and forth here.
Yin
I
and
think that
yang.
should, yeah, I think that's exactly the way that, and that's echoed too in our personal lives as well. We live in a dualistic, dual, polarity reality.
Right.
If everything was all peace and happiness and everything was all kumbaya here, there would be no reason to be here, right? I
Right.
think that's what another higher dimension of reality is for, right? That type of reality isn't for a 3D physical reality, right? It's a struggle here, and it's a struggle here for a purpose because we're able to experience it. We're able to experience um, the good, the bad, the ugly, the pain, the suffering, and on the other side of it, we're able to experience high levels of pleasure and love and happiness. Right? That's what makes us special here. Right? So if you're wanting all love and light and peace and all that shit, it's not going to happen here. Can't happen here. It's impossible to happen here because that's not what this reality is set up for. Now, maybe in a higher level of a different dimension or a different reality, you can be like that, but you don't get to experience the types of things that we experience here. Right? You don't get to experience the intense pain and suffering up there. But on the other side, you don't get to experience the intense love, pleasure, and joy either. Right? So it's a trade off.
So in either way, you're sacrificing something or you're giving up something. So where do you see humanity heading? Where do you see us in the next like 100 years or so? Are we still here or
I think we're still here to a certain degree, but I think it's going to be way different. It's going to be way different. And I don't know if that difference is going to be good for us or bad for us. I feel like we're on like a precipice right now,
yeah?
and we have like a huge decision to make. What way are we going to go? What are we going to do? You know, because it seems like the people that are fighting to keep things the way that they are is a regressed state, right? Like people are like, oh, let's just I don't want to give up my values and I don't want to give up the things that I've stood for through all the generations. I just want to keep everything the exact same way that it is, right? Well, how did keeping things the exact same way that it is benefit anybody? We're still living in a slave system, right? We still have this monetary screwed up 9 to 5 bullshit type of reality that we've lived in, as
I'm,
far
I
back as
I
people can
hate it,
remember.
man. I'm sick of it. The 9 to 5 grind, you know?
Right. So, but how do we change that into something that's beneficial for everyone without taking away everyone's rights and everyone's, without turning it into a surveillance state, without turning it into something that we don't want? That's the hardest conclusion and the hardest thing to figure out, right? Because if we don't want this reality anymore, we don't want this 9 to 5, this monetary system, then how are we going to change into something that's actually beneficial without going the route that they want to take us, right? But if we stay the same and we stay stagnant, then we're regressing. We're not evolving and we're not changing,
Right.
right? Do we want to live in a highly advanced technological, society? Right? I think that a lot of people do, but they want to live in it without the surveillance and without the control aspect of that, which is going to be dang near impossible to do, right? So we're at like a precipice right now. We're at like a transformation period, and people have no idea what they want. They have no plan on how to get us to that point, because the ones that are in charge and that are pushing this technological surveillance state have everything worked out. They got it all planned out. They know exactly what they're doing, right? But the other side has absolutely zero plan, right? So it's really only one direction that we can really go in. But I think that we can turn that technologically advanced society into something beneficial. I'm just not 100% sure how that's going to work, and I hope that it works out and everything goes okay. But if we just keep going down this path that we're going down, the people are going to make those decisions for us.
Oh, it's an awesome conversation, my man. Your show, Raised by Giants. Why the name Raised by Giants, by the way, before we end this?
Raised by giants because I all my entire family is really tall. My dad's taller than me. His brother's taller than him, and his older brother's taller than his
How
other
tall?
brothers too. I think his oldest brother is 6'8".
Oh wow. How tall are
Yeah,
you?
6'4".
6'4". Damn, yeah. I wish I had some of that height.
And then also, I think my dad had some experiences growing up and stuff. And back when I was around 18, he told me about them. And I originally wanted it to be a name of a band. Wanted to do make a band, title it "Raised by Giants," but
That would be a dope, what, like a metal band?
yeah, metal band, yeah,
Yeah, that would be an awesome fucking like death metal band or something.
yeah.
Yeah. All right, Ryder. Thank you so
Love that
much.
shit. Thank you, brother.
Yo, you're a metal fan,
Absolutely love metal.
but like because metal has its own subgenre. So which ones do you like, or which one do you prefer? I'm a thrash metal dude, so
I'm more like post-hardcore and metalcore. I like, it's kind of like a different genre than thrash metal, but I like singing in my courses, and
right. No,
then
there's nothing wrong with that.
super metal
Right.
verses and with screaming and stuff with super catchy
So
singing
like
choruses.
Born of Osiris kind of.
Yeah, I saw Born of Osiris a
I
couple of times.
love Born of Osiris, man. They're such an awesome man, and they throw in innuendo in there, which I love.
Yeah, fucking bow down. I love that song. Dude. Yeah, Born of Osiris is good. Suicide Silence is good too. I'm not too much big on their new stuff, but
Right.
I dig some of the more the poppy side of it, like Beartooth and
Yeah,
Devil Wears Prada and
right,
Miss May I, As I Lay Dying.
right. Those
There's
are those are the
uh,
favorites.
Under Oath, of course, and some Motionless and White and bands like that. Some of the newer age metal bands, but I grew up listening to like Slipknot and Corn. I've seen Slipknot several times, Corn a couple of times. You know,
Yeah, Slipknot's awesome.
I like to get a whole like range of music. I listen to pretty much anything besides country. I
I'm
don't get
same
into.
way. I'm not a country guy either. I'm not. I just can't. I try, but I just can't. It just the chords and the melody. It just like I hate mayonnaise. It's kind of like that. Like I it just can't do it. You know what I mean? But have you ever heard of Periphery? A group called Periphery?
Yes, Periphery is going to be in Denver here soon. They're with shoot, it's another really big band. I can't think of. They're on a tour right now. Periphery and
Right.
somebody else. I just saw it on my Facebook page. But
Yeah, I
yeah,
love
Periphery.
Periphery, man. Misha Mansour is like to me extremely underrated guitarist. Like to me, like extremely. Um,
The singer of Periphery did a whole album with From First to Last. I don't know if you listened to that one, but it was really good. I forget what Dead Trees, I think, is the
and
name.
can you send me a link or something?
Yeah,
So I
I'll
can,
send you a link.
yeah.
It's
All
a
right.
really good
Cool.
album. It's whenever Sonny he created Skrillex. I mean, you
No, I
know
don't even know who
the
that is.
it's like
Oh,
his
Skrillex. Skrillex. I know
Skrillex.
Skrillex. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
he was in this band. He was a vocalist for like a metal like emo band like back in 2005 called From First to Last. They
Okay.
did like an album and then he quit from First to Last and then started Skrillex. And they did a couple more albums and then they got the singer of Periphery to come and do their Dead Trees album.
Yeah, he
Phenomenal,
could
really
sing.
good
He
album.
could sing. That the guy. Is it Brandon? His name is. I don't know
I
if
think
his
it's
name.
Brandon. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. He's good. He's good. Well, thank you, my man. I appreciate it, and I definitely need to have you on because there's some stuff I didn't get to talk to you about. But again, time out of respect, I don't want to keep you here, and I know you got other things. You have a show coming up on Monday with Lindsay. You had told me.
Yeah, it'll premiere on YouTube on Tuesday, 9 p.m. EST. On
All right, my
YouTube with
man.
Lindsay Sharman. I do two shows a week, one on Tuesday, 7 p.m. Mountain Time, 9 p.m. EST, and on Friday at 7 p.m. Mountain Time, 9 p.m. EST. So
And where else can people find you?
they can find me on any of the podcast platforms, Rockfin, Odyssey, and on Instagram at Raised by Giants Pod. Thanks so much, brother. I appreciate you for having me on. I love the
Yeah, man.
conversation. Let me know when it gets up. Send me the link.
Yeah, and then I'll have you back on, dude, and maybe we start off with metal next time in the conversation, and we'll go that route.
That sounds good, my friend.
All
I
right, bro.
actually I love music and I love
Yeah,
movies and TV, so that's one of the original things that I actually wanted to talk about, but it just came out into this community. I wanted to talk about movies and
right.
TVs, do a movie and TV podcast show, but hey, I love
This
doing
this
this. So
this is what you were meant to do, man.
thanks, brother. Appreciate you
All
a
right,
lot. I'll come back on anytime. Just let me know.
all right, bro. Peace, man.